Hello and welcome to Magda Knits. My name is Magda and I'm coming to you from the southeast of England, and this is my little space where I talk about all of my knitting, yarn dyeing and yarn spinning. Although today I would like to talk a little bit about sewing as well, because I have managed to make myself a garment for the very first time and I would like to show it to you. However, if you're not interested in sewing or in spinning, or if you're looking for anything in particular in this video, then you can see the timestamps in the description below this video, so you can skip to any content as you wish. So I will start off with what I'm wearing, and I kind of want to make it the main feature of this episode. This is the Clover by Wallin that I completed just a few days ago, really. And I would like to take you through the experience of knitting this garment because it was a little bit challenging. And to be honest, I have found that there are only a few people that have made this garment, at least according to Ravelry. And I found it quite surprising because it is a free pattern, which is great. But yet not that many people actually decided to knit it. And I was kind of wondering why, because in my opinion, it's a beautiful design. But then it made me wonder that perhaps it's the complexity of the design or the pattern, and I decided that perhaps if I share my experiences with you guys, or if I talk about the problems that I encountered, perhaps it will encourage more people to actually pick up their needles and make this beautiful sweater. So yes, to start off, I will insert a picture just to show you what it looks like, how it fits. I'm very happy with the fit that I got. This is exactly how I like my sweaters to sit on my body. There is just enough positive ease, but it's not oversized, and I like the length of the sweater as well, because I am not a massive fan of cropped garments either. I have knit this garment in the Wallin British wool cone, and this is the colorway cinnamon brown, which is beautiful. I was showing you the yarn on the cone in my previous episode, and yeah, it's just this beautiful shade that has like this beautiful heathering effect. So it's not a completely solid yarn, and I think it makes it a very interesting color. I was a little bit worried that perhaps there's going to be too much interest in this color, and so the cables and the lace part in the middle panel here is not going to be very visible because of the yarn, but actually I think it works out pretty well. I think you can see all the details just enough. And that is my phone. Sorry, that was my phone. Apologies for that. I was talking about the yarn, I think, about the colors. It all worked out very well. The other thing that I guess it's worth adding, I was knitting this with a single strand of the woolen knit, and it worked for this pattern. I will talk about the yarn weight and requirements for the pattern in a minute, a little bit more. But yes, generally I am super happy with this sweater, and I can already tell I'll be wearing it a lot. But anyway, when it comes to knitting this, it took me a while to actually find the courage to cast it on, because it was a little bit of a challenge for me to wrap my head around everything that I was seeing in this pattern. And I couldn't figure out what kind of yarn I should be using, and then as I decided to knit, I did struggle a little bit with the instructions and with the chart. So as I said, I'm really hoping that this video is going to help people to find the courage and cast it on and knit it, because it's amazing. So the challenges that I found with this pattern started off with the yarn choice. At the beginning, I was hoping to knit this sweater holding the woolen knit yarn double, because the pattern page is telling you to knit this with a DK weight yarn. Now, as it turns out, and even Wallin is saying this in the instructions of this pattern, that actually the yarn is classified as DK weight, but it knits up like a fingering weight yarn. So that kind of confused me at the beginning, because I didn't realize it straight away, and I started swatching with holding the yarn double. Of course I didn't get the gauge, I was not even near it, and I was talking about this last time in my previous episode. I was trying to get some help, was trying to involve a little bit of math and maybe try to knit a different size. But in the end, the solution was very simple. It was just to use a single strand of this yarn and then everything was completely fine. So I did a swatch with a single strand in stockinette stitch, and that gave me 27 stitches, which was exactly what was needed for this project. However, I think I did change the size of the needle. I think the pattern is telling you to knit on 3.25 millimeters, and I believe I ended up knitting on 3mm needles. But yeah, got the gauge. So that was the first thing that was slightly confusing. So I would say definitely swatch, and I would say just go for a fingering weight yarn first, because going for a DK is probably not going to give you the gauge that you're after. The second thing that I found was quite confusing on this pattern are the symbols on the chart. First of all, if you want to knit this pattern, you need to be comfortable with reading charts in general. Many designers nowadays, they have a chart and the written instructions for the charted part. However, here it's not the case. Of course, you've got written instructions, but not for the charted part. So you do need to be comfortable with reading charts. And this garment is actually made flat. So you need to be comfortable with reading the charts by reading one row, or the right row is read from right to left, and then as you're purling your way back, you're actually reading the chart the other way around, so you go in like a snake kind of way. So you really need to be comfortable with that. If you are a beginner knitter, I would say this is probably not the best pattern to go for, because there are quite a few challenges, and as I say, the chart is one of them. So I really found the symbols to be really confusing. Once you figure out the symbols, then you're fine and you will be flying. But when you look at the, I guess you can call it legend, it's like the explanation of the symbols within the chart. They are very similar. It's all about little slanted lines and then an explanation of what that stitch really means. But what I found confusing is the fact that the little legend, it doesn't show you those lines within a square. So obviously, if you look at the chart, you've got little squares with the symbols inside the squares. But in the legend, you don't have those squares, it's just lines. And that's really confusing, because you don't know how many squares these lines are distributed across. And it really makes a huge difference, because it can be a different stitch each time. And even then, you've got like a symbol with just one square and then like a slanted line across it. So the confusing bit is, if this little square is on its own and it's surrounded by different symbols, then this means it's either a knit two together, or it's the knit one, slip one, and then pass over. However, when you have two of these identical symbols, one next to another, slanting in the same direction, that's actually a twisted stitch. So it's really confusing, and I don't understand why Marie would use these kind of symbols in this way, because I don't think there is like a standardized way of representing certain stitches, and I think there could be a better way of, like, you know, explaining them. But what I did, I just looked at the chart, and after I have figured everything out, I just took a little piece of paper and I drew those symbols with the squares around them, just to help myself a little bit to guide myself and understand which stitch should be actually included in the chart in a particular place. So you really need to sit down and figure things out. It's not obvious straight away, and it can be a little bit confusing. That was my phone again. I'm so sorry. This is just a chaos today. Anyway, so yes, the symbols, confusing, but once you figure it out, it actually all starts to make sense, and then you will be flying and you'll be completely fine. The other thing that I found a little bit confusing is also the fact that the chart is quite big, And when you look at it, you've got two places across the chart where you are doing some increases, and then after a few rows, then you're doing some decreases. And that was really confusing for me, because for me, it just means like I am creating fabric that is just like in this kind of shape, which just I found really strange and very counterintuitive. So I decided to skip it. Well, don't do that, because they're actually needed in there. Those increases and decreases are creating those like really big bubbles. These guys. So those ones are created by doing those increases and decreases. So do not skip them unless you really don't want to have them on your sweater, but they are needed. And even though it looks a little bit counterintuitive, just do it, just go for it. However, there is a little trap with them. So as you get to the armhole shaping, after you do some decreases, if you have the tendency to count your stitches across your row just to check whether you are in the right place within the pattern, as I do, then please be mindful that if you are counting these stitches in the row where you actually have those big bubbles in, then you need to be mindful that these bubbles are created by adding 4 extra stitches, and actually you should not count them towards the overall count of the stitches across the row, because you're going to end up with 8 extra stitches. And this is what really confused me, and I got into that trap. So the back panel, which I started with, is actually a little bit messed up around the armholes, because things just didn't add up, and I couldn't understand why. So yeah, after I did some decreases, then obviously the pattern is telling you, okay, so at this point you should have an X number of stitches. So I was counting my stitches, and then I realized, hold on a second, I have way too many stitches, but I'm pretty sure I did the decreases correctly. So I kept decreasing, and then I was counting again, and all of a sudden I didn't have enough stitches, and I was like, what is going on? Well, that's because then I got to a part where the bubbles were not present anymore, so then you all of a sudden had 8 stitches less. So please do keep that in mind if you're knitting this project, because you're gonna mess things up. I realized this only after I was knitting the front panel. So as I say, the back is bit messed up, but you can't see it at all. I think it's because the sleeves kind of rectified this whole weirdness of the back, and you definitely don't see a funny shape. But yeah, 8 stitches is actually quite a lot. But yes, this is a little trap. So if you are counting your stitches across the row where you've got the big bubbles, you have to count the bubble stitches as just 1 stitch. Keep that in mind. And one last thing that actually is also worth mentioning about this pattern is there is a mistake in the chart. So there is 1 stitch, I think it was just 1 stitch, quite high up within the chart. So it's actually quite easy to figure it out at that point, because it literally throws you off the rhythm, and you can straight away see that something's not quite right. It's around this kind of honeycomb section, and the honeycomb is, when you look at the symbols, they go by, you've got like 2 squares together, one next to another, with 2 lines slanted that way, and then the next row it's 2 squares slanting that way, and then they just go in pair like that. But then there is this one row where those 2 stitches are actually kind of like creating this sort of triangle instead of leaning in the same direction. So you can actually straight away kind of catch it, but yeah, I thought I'm just gonna sort of point it out. And yeah, when it comes to the instructions themselves, I think they're quite straightforward, the written part. Mary Wallin doesn't really write a novel. The instructions are quite to the point. There isn't that much information. I guess maybe it's very difficult for me to tell whether they would be beginner friendly or not. But then again, I think just because of the chart, I wouldn't really recommend it for beginners anyway. But I found these instructions clear and I knew exactly what I was supposed to do, and I didn't struggle with anything. I didn't have to reread any sections. Can't even say that. Yes, everything was pretty much clear and I didn't struggle with anything. So overall, I think it wasn't as bad. I think it was just difficult to start and figure out the symbols and the chart. But afterwards you're just flying. So yeah, I'm really happy with the sweater. When it comes to the details on it, well, yes, so you've got like the honeycomb section around like under the arms. Then you've got a little bit of cabling going on, twisted stitches, and then in the middle you've got a section with like a lace panel. I'm obviously wearing a vest and you can see it. I mean, if you're brave, you could just not wear a vest. I wouldn't really feel particularly comfortable about that. And then when it comes to the sleeves, then it's kind of similar. You have, it's all stockinette stitch here. Then you've got like just one line of the honeycomb. And then you've got the same panel here across the sleeve here. You just don't really have any twisted stitches and cables, so that goes much quicker. No bubbles here as well. Do you know what? I'm a bit self-conscious about those bubbles because they're in just slightly unfortunate places. But yeah, bubbles. That's bubbles. Yes, and as I said, it's all knitted flat. I guess you could probably easily transform it to knit it in the round, especially I guess the sleeves. But I decided to just go for knitting it flat. However, I could not be bothered to finish it off with a mattress stitch, so you can actually see the seams quite well. But I don't mind. I genuinely don't mind to have seams like this. I just used a normal back stitch because I couldn't be bothered to go for mattress stitch on such a thin yarn and such long sleeves. And I actually really struggled to kind of see the little bar that you're supposed to pick up while you're doing the mattress stitch. I think it's also because of the yarn being quite fuzzy and the color being quite heathery. Anyway, it doesn't bother me at all. And the neckline, I decided to knit it in a round, but I think the instructions were some kind of form of telling you to knit it flat and then kind of seam it on the side. I didn't read the instructions for the neckline. I just kind of went with my instinct, just picked up the stitches, did a bit of ribbing, and then bind it off with the Italian bind off. It sits quite snugly around my neck, but I don't mind. I was a little bit worried that I was not going to be able to put my head through it, because as I started doing the bind off, it just seemed like it was getting really small. So I panicked a little bit, and then I started binding off a little bit too loose, I guess. So maybe it's not necessarily very neat. Normally this kind of bind off gives you a better, or like a much neater finish, but it's okay. And to be honest, I did not, what's it called? I did not block the neckline. So as I was knitting all the pieces, after I finished one piece, I would block it and dry it straight away, and then I would put the sweater together. So after the sweater was completely assembled, it was not blocked. And because the neckline was knitted in the round after all the pieces were assembled, I did not block it. Maybe it will look nicer if I do block it. Perhaps I should just like put the sweater, just the collar in the water, and maybe block it that way. I don't know, it doesn't really bother me that much, but maybe after giving it a little bit of a wash, it will kind of, all the stitches will kind of go into place a little bit better. But yeah, so this is my Clover. I think that's all I had to say about it. As I say, I hope this kind of helped people. if they had any doubts about knitting this pattern, because as I said, it's beautiful and it's a free pattern, and it's by Marie Wallin, one of those really I guess popular designers, and I always wanted to knit something by Marie Wallin but never really got around to it. So yeah, this is my first garment by Marie Wallin. If you guys ever make this sweater, let me know, because I'm really curious to see how it's gonna turn out for you, and it would be interesting for me to learn about your experiences as well. So yeah, that's all I have to say about this sweater. I did mention in my last episode that I have become quite monogamous with my knitting. So at the moment I am actively working only on one project, and because I have finished my Clover, I decided to cast on a new project straight away. So at the moment I am knitting the Easy Eyelet Yoke dress by Knitatude. I will insert a picture to show you what I'm aiming for, because the progress that I have made so far is there isn't much going on. Plus, I forgot to transfer it onto like a longer cord, so all of the stitches are really bunched up. But what I have right now is it's just the yoke. Yeah, sorry, like the shape is horrendous because of the length of the cord. Let me pick up the yarn that I just dropped. So I'm knitting this in Cloud-Worn Fibers Pima Cotton DK weight yarn. It's 100% cotton and the colorway is Slate. And I don't know how I feel about this project, to be honest. I am not on the gauge. I am half a stitch off, which is not much, but overall it could potentially make a difference. And I don't think I like the fabric that I'm producing. I feel like I think it's a little bit too much of a see-through situation. And I don't know if I'm going to feel comfortable about it. It's not like this is going to bloom, and it's not like the fiber is going to fill up the holes, because this is cotton, so it's not going to change much. So I'm not entirely sure. I think I'll just carry on until I split for the sleeves. I haven't tried it on actually yet, or I might do it today and just see what it looks like, how it hangs on the body. I don't know, there's just something about this fabric that I don't quite like. So I'm not really sure whether I will persevere. In the worst case, I could potentially make like an underskirt in like a very light fabric so that you can't see through. But yeah, I don't know. So far what I have is just literally a folded neckline. I think folded necklines are my nightmare. I've messed it up, I think twice in the past on another project, and this time it kind of didn't work out either. I don't know what it is about me and folded necklines. I just can't seem to do them properly. It looks fine. This time at least it's not like going sideways as I did with my Primavera, where the stitches were like going on the side. But it still didn't work out perfectly well. And then yeah, I did some increases. The increases on this pattern are made by just yarn overs, so you're actually creating those little eyelets. I think the original pattern is telling you to do the pattern is telling you to do 4 rows of those eyelet increases, but I figured for me personally it would just go way too low. And so I decided that instead of doing the eyelets on the last row of increases, I just decided to do normal increases that actually don't leave those little holes. just so that you can't see my bra when I'm wearing it. But yeah, as I say, I'm not entirely sure whether this dress will actually happen. At least not in this yarn, maybe. Yeah, I'll make my mind up after I try it on and I see how it sits on the body. So I will let you know. But I still like this design and I would like to knit this dress either way. So if it doesn't work in this yarn, then perhaps I'm going to try something different. I'm kind of thinking that maybe I could do it in wool. So in this case, I would need to dive into my stash and look for some DK weight yarn, which I think could be fairly easy. My stash is getting really big actually. So I keep all of my yarn in like big plastic boxes under my bed. And I managed to, up until recently, I managed to squeeze everything into 3 big boxes, but now they're just overflowing and things are really squished. And I actually had to transfer some stuff into a 4th box. And also I started to stash some fabric now that I started sewing, so there's just loads of crafty stuff under my bed. I'm running out of space. I need a bigger bed so I can put more stuff underneath. No, I'm joking. Anyway, so that was all the knitting content that I had for today. Not much, but as I said, I've been pretty monogamous with my knitting, so I don't really have that many projects to show. It kind of made me wonder about like the future of this podcast because I really don't have that much to show anymore, and I figured that perhaps I'm just going to be recording after every finished garment so that I can show you like the finished object and talk you through the process and the yarn that I've been using. Because yeah, I don't really have that many WIPs to show you, and I have been really good and I have not been buying yarn lately either, so it's just finished objects that I have to show. But anyway, let's talk about spinning. I am actually going to start off with the fact that my spinning wheel, which you can see behind me, this is my Ashford Traveller, and I think I'm going to be saying goodbye to this wheel very soon, and that's because my partner is crazy and he got me a new wheel. So literally today I got my Ashford Joy. Yes, it's the Ashford Joy. And I was just shocked that he got me a wheel. This one behind me, I got it literally a year ago to the day. This is the wheel that I learned to spin on, and I have like, it has a really special place in my heart because I learned to spin on it, and I think it's just beautiful. It's a in itself, it's almost like a pretty house decoration, if you like. So it will break my heart to sell it, but yeah, I mean, I don't really have space for 2 wheels, and I think it's still maybe worth a little bit. So, you know, can always get some money for that wheel. But yeah, it's beautiful, and I think it's one of those older wheels because it's single treadle. And when I did a little bit of my research, I think they were making those single treadle Ashford Travelers back in the 80s and 70s. So I think it actually comes from those times. But yeah, I was kind of moaning because it was a bit of squeaking lately, and one of the parts, I can't remember the name of that part from the top of my head, but it was becoming a little bit loose, so my partner had to help me to put some screws together a little bit tighter on the wheel. It just needed a little bit of love, but I think in his head he just thought, oh, okay, she needs a new wheel because this one's not good enough. And he got me a wheel. So it's crazy, but I'm starting my new adventure on a new wheel. It's different because it's a double treadle, so I kind of have to adjust my sitting position slightly. But yeah, it's a much better wheel. I already started spinning a little bit today. I don't know how this yarn is going to turn out because, well, yeah, I'm going to show you then. Instead of finished yarn, first I'm going to show you the work in progress. So this is the first bobbin that I finished on my Ashford Traveller. And then the second bobbin, I already started on my new wheel, so I have no idea how this is going to turn, because I have a feeling this one is probably going to be a little bit thinner than the other one. For some reason it just feels different when I'm spinning on the other wheel, so it may be a bit of a disaster after I apply this yarn, but it's alright. Yeah, so this is the fiber that I am spinning. It's 100% merino that I dyed myself. I'm going to show you the picture of the braid because as it happens on the outside you can pretty much see like a lot of purple, but there are slightly different shades around this fiber. I didn't do anything clever about like dividing the fiber. It was done completely randomly. Actually, this fiber kind of wanted to divide itself into like really thin bits. It kind of disintegrated after I dyed it, so I just divided it how it wanted it to be divided, and then I just started spinning. So I didn't really think much about the colors distribution. It's going to be completely random, and I'm actually quite excited about it. I am curious to see how it's going to turn out. But yeah, that's going to happen on my new spinning wheel. But the last, I guess I can say that the last project that happened on my old wheel was spinning for a sweater. So I finished the yarn that I was spinning, and there it is. So I got just over 500 grams. I think it's 550 something. And it's loads of little skeins. As I said, it's 550 something grams and it's over 1,100 meters. So I think I've got enough yarn for a sweater. So I'm really excited to start knitting with it. I've got little labels here because every single skein has a different weight. The reason why it kind of ended up being in like slightly bigger and smaller hanks is because I realized that the bobbins that I had for my wheel here, they are actually different size. So I think when I looked at the bobbins, they kind of looked as if 3 of them were kind of the original ones that probably came with the wheel, and then I had 3 more which turned out that they were slightly smaller, or like I could pack less fiber onto them. So as a result, yeah, things were a little bit unevenly distributed across the bobbins. And at the end of the day, I mean, you probably are never able to pack exactly the same amount of fiber on every single bobbin, so you always end up with some leftovers, and I was just plying them together. There is one skein which, I think this one here, that was literally like the last bobbin that was still pretty full, and it was just on its own, so I decided to chain ply it. If you looked very closely, you will see slightly difference between this skein and the rest, so I kind of will keep it on the side and use it for something different than these guys here, or it's going to be like an emergency skein if I do a sweater and kind of run out or something. But yeah, the twist is a little bit tighter on this because the plying technique was different. These ones here, they are all traditional 3-ply, all spun in the S direction. S or Z? Counterclockwise. Yeah, so I'm super happy with this result. It's really, really soft fiber, so I think this sweater is going to be really pleasant. And I can't wait to just maybe first swatch with it, see what kind of fabric I'm getting. I still haven't made up my mind what kind of pattern I want to use it for, whether I want something textured or do I want to go for something completely plain and maybe just have like a plain stockinette stitch sweater where I can just show this beautiful yarn, because I think it's got a really beautiful shade. It's not completely solid, and it's this kind of grayish brown kind of thing. Really beautiful. So as for the process, I had 6 bobbins full of singles, and then just to make the most consistent yarn, I wanted to ply the first bobbin with the third and then the fifth, and then for the second bobbin I wanted to spin the second, the fourth and the sixth. And this is what I did originally, but as I said, I kept being left with those leftover singles, so then I just plied things randomly. So I guess maybe it's not as consistent as I would like, but at the end of the day you just want to make the most of the fiber that you've spun. So yeah, I will definitely keep you updated on the project that I decide to go for, and yeah, I will be talking about it once it's finished and knitted up. As for my knitting plans, as I say, I really want to knit the dress, and I think it probably is going to take a while. Although having said that, I forgot to mention the needles that I'm knitting this on. It's actually 6mm, which is really a lot. If you think about DK weight yarn, 6mm seems a lot, at least to me. So yeah, maybe this is one of the reasons why I don't quite like the fabric, but on the other hand, it's going really quickly. So yeah, we'll see, but it's a dress, so it will be a lot of fabric and it will be a lot of knitting. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I feel like I still have a lot of time to make up my mind about what I want to knit next. So now I would like to talk about sewing, because as I said, this is the first time I have made myself a garment and I am so happy with it. I am so proud of it, and I am really glad that I managed to actually complete it. I have purchased a pattern for a skirt, a different skirt, and I thought it was going to be fairly easy because it looked easy, and I think it is easy. It's just that I am a complete beginner and I could not figure out the instructions, so I completely messed up. I couldn't figure out the instructions for the waist, so I've messed up. Basically, I started off by practicing on some old sheets because I would not dare to cut into my fabric that I paid so much money for. I didn't realize that fabric is so expensive, and I decided to go for linen, which again is not like the cheapest, but I really wanted to have a linen skirt. But I was just way too scared to cut into the fabric and mess it up, so I used some old sheets to practice, and thank God I did it because, yeah, as I said, it didn't work. The neck, not the neck, the waistline, I could not understand the instructions. I was looking on YouTube and I was looking for tutorials or some kind of walkthroughs for the pattern that I got. And I did find one video where a lady was actually taking you through all the steps of the exact pattern that I purchased. However, as she got to the part that was supposed to explain how to put the waistline in the zip, she was like, well, yeah, you go to my Patreon website and then sign up and then you can see the rest of the video. But yeah, I didn't quite want to become a patron and like pay for the video. I don't know, like I just didn't want to do that. So then I was like, I will figure it out myself by just looking at the instructions. That's what people do. They just read the instructions. But sewing instructions are a little bit of a different language to me. I don't know. I just couldn't understand it. Even though you've got written instructions and you've got pictures, I still couldn't figure it out. So I think I have put the waistband upside down. And I didn't know how to attach it properly. It was a disaster, so I completely gave up. And then I decided to make myself a pair of shorts. Not quite a skirt, I wanted a skirt, but I was like, okay, let's do shorts. It was a free pattern. It was from the Peppermint magazine. They've got loads of beautiful patterns, and I think they're all for free. So I decided to make myself a pair of shorts. I still had a lot of fabric left from the old sheets, so I kept practicing. And I messed up again. So what I did, this time I think, yes, I messed up the pockets. I think I gave up even before I got to the waistband. I messed up the pockets. One of the pockets ended up being on the outside of the garment. The other one I managed to get inside the garment, but I just completely sewn through it, like you couldn't put your hand in. I just closed the pocket. And I think some of the fabric was like the wrong side out on one side of the shorts. It was a complete disaster. So at that time I was like, oh my god, I will never learn to make any sewing, and I really wanted to give up. But I decided to reach out to some of my sewing friends, and I sent a message to Emily Kate of the Emily Kate Made This podcast, and she saved my life because she kindly sent a link to a video tutorial for a skirt, which was exactly what I was looking for. And it's a fantastic tutorial that literally holds your hand throughout the whole process. I think that video is like over 2 hours long because it literally shows you the whole process step by step. And yeah, I managed to make myself a skirt. So thank you so much, Emily Kate, if you're watching this, because you just saved my confidence, and now I want to do a bit more sewing. I even got more fabric, and I'm already dreaming about making a dress, but I just can't really make up my mind about the pattern. I'm really scared of written patterns now because the first two ones I failed at miserably. But yeah, I just have to keep going, right? I just have to keep trying and keep practicing. Of course, before I make anything, I'm still going to try to practice on some kind of old fabric. I'm not going to cut into this new beautiful cotton that I got lately because I don't want to mess it up. You see, this is the thing about sewing. It's not like with knitting that you can unravel. Once you cut the fabric, this is it. Of course, like if you don't sew things properly together, then you can unpick, but the cutting is like the crucial part, and if you get that wrong, then you are done. So this is quite scary actually, but yeah, I'm hoping that if I practice a little bit, then I can make it work. And yeah, there was one pattern that I absolutely fell in love with. It was a cardamom dress by, I can't remember by who, but it's gorgeous. Oh my god, it's so beautiful, and I would love to make it, but the pattern is £16. Now, I know this is not a fortune, but because I had so much bad experience with reading patterns before, I'm just really scared that I'm gonna spend this money and then I'm just not gonna, no, I'm not gonna succeed. Especially that this pattern, apparently, when it comes to difficulties, I think it's rated 4 out of 5. So that's definitely intermediate. So yes, one day, but definitely not now. But yeah, if you know of any patterns that are beginner friendly and are similar to this, then please do let me know, because I really would like to make myself a skirt. Basically, I'm thinking of something that's kind of like knee length, although when it comes to the length of the dress, that's very easy to adjust, right? So that's fine. And I would like something that has a bit of a shape around the waist. I think this pattern, it's got like gathered, I think it's got like elastic waistband, so it's kind of gathered in the middle. And yeah, I like the fact that it doesn't have sleeves, but I wouldn't mind to knit something with maybe short sleeves. I don't know. I love the color, but I think this is like way out of my league. Like I definitely need to practice a bit more to probably make a color, but I think it looks amazing. Anyway, if you've got any suggestions for something easy, ideally with videos, that would be amazing, and I would appreciate yeah, anything. Or like any kind of maybe tutorials in general, or maybe if there are any YouTube channels that are good for beginners. Yeah, anything, just throw anything at me, because this is the beginning of a new journey for me, and it can be overwhelming. I remember when I started spinning, it was like, oh my god, where do I go for information? There is so much out there, but in a way it's almost difficult to find it. So yeah, anything, let me know. Yeah, so I think that's it. I don't think I have anything more. Perhaps I forgot about something. If I did, I apologize, and I will try to insert it in my future videos. So that's all I had for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to say hi, if you want to find me somewhere else on the internet, I'm around on Instagram and on Ravelry as Magda Knits with double S at the end. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this episode and you will be back for more. I can't really tell when the next one is going to be. I'm thinking to record it after I finish something knitting wise or spinning wise. It will probably have to accumulate throughout a couple of weeks. But yeah, I'll see you when I see you. Thank you very much. Bye!